Welcome to Jim Cantelon Today. This is Bible study for the 21st century. You know, friends, again, we have increased viewership and a lot of people watching the program for the first or second or third time, just getting used to us. I have interviews every show, and today is no exception. You're going to meet a very sharp young pastor. If you've been watching the program the last few weeks, you've met Kevin Shepherd, tremendous guy. But I do that deliberately. I choose people for the interviews who are on the ground in ministry with a proven track record. I'm not interested in celebrities. I'm interested in foot soldiers. Right after this.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
I kind of am sorry this is my last interview this month with Kevin Shepherd. If you've been following JCT over the last 4 weekends, you're loving what you're hearing from this guy, as am I. So Kevin, we got one more interview. Let me ask you a really important question.
Okay.
What makes you happy? Instantly, come on, don't think about it.
Jesus.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now that sounds a little bit...
Sunday school answer,
That sounds
right?
contrived
I know.
to me.
No, it's
but
not.
that came out of you. I didn't warn you.
No.
Jesus makes you happy. You have to explain.
The reason I paused is because I had a really interesting conversation with someone in the lineup to register a car about this very thing.
Really?
Yeah. It was the person I was buying the car from.
Okay, tell me about the conversation.
Okay. So the person he asked me a similar question. So that's why I paused. I thought, oh, wow. So I was buying this car off this guy. Had never met him before, didn't know him. I'll leave some of the details out. But at the end of the day, when we were driving out of his driveway to buy the car, I said to my wife, I think I need to be this guy's friend. She goes, what do you mean? I said, I just feel like we need to be this guy's friend. I don't know. We were standing in the lineup. It was like an hour long to register the car on a Saturday. We're standing there, and he says to me, what makes you happy? And I said, why do you ask me that question? He said, well, we had some friends over the night before, and we were wondering what makes people happy in other parts of the world, and they don't have as much as we do, and how can they be happy? And so I said to him, well, following Jesus makes me happy. He goes, what do you mean? And as soon as I said, it was interesting, we're in this lineup, nobody's talking in the registration
So
office.
everybody's listening to you.
And as soon as I said it, the guy beside me kind of gives me the side eye. He's like, where's this gonna go, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I believe in Jesus. I believe he is who he said he is, and he did what he said he could do. And I find that when I follow him, he gives me purpose for my life. And when I fulfill my purpose, it fulfills me, and that's what ends up making me happy. I don't chase happiness.
Right.
The Bible actually never tells us to chase happiness.
No.
It's an illusion to do that. But when I find fulfillment through Jesus leading me, that gives me happiness. So I said, have you ever, heard of Jesus? You ever thought about that? He goes, I have a challenge with his early narrative. And I said, like, do you mean virgin birth and that? He says, yeah. He said, but some of the things that I've learned about the kind of person Jesus was, he said, I can understand following him would make you a better person, and that would make you feel fulfilled, and that could make you happy. So we had this great conversation. But that's truly my answer. It's not just, the Sunday school answer to everything. It really, I think Jesus gives us the purpose in life. And when we follow that thing, it doesn't mean everything's perfect and everything's easy, but in the midst of that, I find I find joy in the midst of his leading.
Do you think the disciples were happy?
I think they had very happy, fun moments. I think Jesus was incredibly fun, by the way.
Yeah.
The writer of the Hebrews says the oil of joy was on Jesus more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Any room he walked in, he was more joyful than anyone else in the room.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful way to see Jesus. If you asked people to write down the top 20 characteristics of Jesus, I don't think fun or joy would hit the top 20. But really, it was a predominant characteristics of Jesus. I think he generated that in the disciples around him. They had more fulfillment than they had ever had in their life before.
He also, I think, had a sense of humor. Comes through again and again, implied, sometimes more clearly than other places in some of his parables. But the fact that he was the central figure at a lot of parties.
Yeah, absolutely.
and he had this thing about partying with publicans and prostitutes and drunks and sort of the offscouring of society to the point where the established religious culture of the Pharisees and the Sadducees took umbrage with him. You know, the old adage, a man is known by the company he keeps. Mm-hmm. So obviously that tells you who Jesus really is. Mm-hmm. I hear what you're saying.
We should be the biggest partiers on the planet.
Well,
we should be.
We know how to have fun, right?
Well, we should be, because we have Jesus. We have this eternal scope and perspective. We should be. And when they partied, and even in the Old Testament, it wasn't just like, yay, oh, we're really happy. It's like, kill the fatted calf, out in the street for a week, raucous shindigs, like it was amazing.
We had my 40th birthday party. I hesitate to think how long ago it was, but we had it in Jerusalem where I was pastoring, King of Kings. Google King of Kings, by the way, friends. You can see my church. Anyway, it was our 40th, my 40th birthday, and I've always made a point wherever I pastored to have more friends outside of the church than I have inside the church. Just me with something that I just did. Okay. So I had as many non-church people there as we had church people, and most of our non-church people were, of course, Israelis. And one of them was a very high-profile journalist. So we just had a blast. I mean, we were laughing to the point where people were almost, enough already, enough fun. And this one journalist, as he's laughing, says, Jim, this is the most fun I've had in a party ever without getting drunk.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think I've been in your services enough to know that you don't come across as a condescending Bible thumper, a holier than thou cleric. This, of course, is who you are, but it's also intentional. You want people to see that your faith is a natural outworking of your core values. Mm-hmm. And it shows. I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you.
In terms of church, however, there's more to it than introducing people to God. There's also some of the formal aspects to it. There's the presentation of babies to the Lord. There's weddings. There's funerals. There's hospital visitation. There's pastoral counseling. There's a lot of grunt work to pastoring. What about pastoring do you like the least?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
And I don't want to put you on the spot.
No.
I know your congregation will be watching these interviews, so I don't want to embarrass you.
I won't name any names.
So I didn't say who. What about pastoring do you like the least?
The pettiness sometimes. I think focusing on things that don't really matter in the long term. But I would say this, and I have an opportunity to learn from a lot of young leaders and minister in circumstances and situations, a lot of young pastors. And one of the things I remind myself about and remind them about is the privilege of pastoring is a privilege like no other occupation. We are invited into people's lives in the most tender moments, like you've said, weddings, funerals, babies being born, when they're sick and in hospital. There's not one single job that's invited into all of those together. So we have this incredible privilege and opportunity to be able to do that. And I think the other thing I would say about that is Hebrews 13 says, I'm accountable to God for the souls that he's entrusted to my care. And so here's where I think it's really important. See, a lot of people talk about pastors as communicators these days, and I think communicating is really important. I study communication, all that kind of stuff. But I'm a pastor, not a communicator. I think too many people are trying to find people to lead. I think as pastors, we need to find a conviction for people, and then people will follow.
If I can build on that, pastor means shepherd, overseer, protector of the flock.
Yeah.
The fact that Jesus called us sheep is a little insulting.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there's nothing dumber on the planet
They
than
were
sheep.
dumb and directionless and follow their own desires to their own detriment.
But having said that, he is a good shepherd.
Amen.
He's called you to be a good shepherd, and you are a shepherd, by the way, by your name.
Yeah.
Young pastors, as you know, I'm out speaking all over the place, and usually it's with guys who are half my age, and they want to sit down and talk to me. We have lunch, and they want to unload and ask me questions. I'm happy to, respond to that. I remind young guys that ultimately they're a priest.
Mm-hmm.
You are God's man between your flock and heaven. Not that you kind of manage the move of the Spirit into their lives, but you're a permission giver. If you open your service to the supernatural, to the presence of God, to prayer, to laying on of hands for the sick and for those who need deliverance and other kinds of spiritual needs, if you do that, they follow. If you don't do that, they don't follow. They never have that in their lives. Your job is not just to run a good show or to have a tightly organized and managed service. You need to have the sensitivity and, in fact, the expectation that God will move in, sometimes in unexpected ways.
Yeah, and I would say not only on Sundays, but trying to help the church understand that the priesthood of all believers, that all of us are priests. All of us invite the presence of God into our lives and into our situations. And I feel like for many years, the church has become professionalized. And in many senses, the body has become anemic as it relates to listening to God for the future of the church. And so as a pastor, as a leader, it's not my job to use my authority to just tell people what to do. I often say the purpose of my authority is to create opportunity. It's to help people understand that there's an opportunity that they have divinely given to them by the Lord to become the priest in whatever situation they're in the middle of. They can become the mediator between God and people in their workplace and for their family and in every situation they find themselves in, even with a stranger that they're buying a car off of.
You know what? I have yet to hear anyone say no when I have offered at the scene of a car accident or a recent heart attack or in a hospital with someone in ICU, oftentimes with people I don't even know. Can I pray for you? And they say yes. At moments of crisis, people's hearts are tuned to heaven. Are they not?
Yeah, oh, for sure. What a beautiful invitation and opportunity. We just need to have the courage and the boldness to walk forward.
Yeah. Kevin Shepherd, thanks for coming our way.
A privilege.
It's been a real joy, and
Thank
I
you.
promise you, friends, we'll have Kevin back on again, as the Lord wills, in the future with JCT TV. Take a little break, back with our study through Matthew right after this.
Friends, as you know, Jim Cantelon has been offering Cantelon's Casual Commentary as a Bible study supplement to his ongoing exposition of St. Matthew's Gospel on JCT TV. He's excited to offer Volume 4, which completes the Matthew study. The Transfiguration, Triumphal Entry, Crucifixion, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ are all covered in this volume. Like the first 3 volumes, it's concise, captivating, and casual. To order your copy, you can call, write, or go online. Request Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 4, and for a gift in any amount, it will be sent to you. When you place your order, also consider becoming a monthly partner. Remember, your gifts help us build this ministry.
So I'm just grinding this out, friends, and I hope you're grinding with me, because boy, this is vital stuff. The last 3 programs, I've been, just following Jesus as he's being pushed before Pilate, and the crowd and the mob are yelling for his crucifixion and saying, "We want Jesus Barabbas, not Jesus of Nazareth. Give us Barabbas, crucify the Jesus of Nazareth guy." Okay, this is right in the midst of what has become known as the Passion of Christ. Let's pick it up in verse 22 of chapter 27. Pilate said to them, this is to the mob, "What then shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ? Crucify him, crucify him. What evil has he done? Crucify him, crucify him." Now, I read that last week, but I wanted to get back to it because of this. Universal question. What shall I do with Jesus? What will you do with Jesus? What will I do with Jesus? You can't ignore him. I remember President Nixon years ago referring to man landing on the moon as the most important event in history. And I remember even as a kid watching that and thinking, no, Mr. Nixon, you're wrong. The most important and earth-shaking and focal point of human history was Jesus' resurrection. Jesus is the pivot point of human history. You can't ignore him. If heaven were to announce, that on such and such a date, let's say Christmas Day, in this year, Jesus is going to appear physically in Jerusalem, there will be multitudes of millions and millions and millions of people who would be there. Nobody commands that kind of an audience. Nobody commands that kind of respect. And even those who don't see themselves as necessarily committed followers of Jesus understand that here is the most important personage in the history of humankind. So sooner or later, friends, you're going to have to answer the question, what will I do with Jesus? Crucify him? Or follow him? Kill him? Or love him? Listen to him or ignore him? I can't make that decision for you. I can only make that decision for me. And that's the way it is. Okay, moving on. Verse 26. He released Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, and boy, this is nasty. I mean, this was a cheap shot on Pilate's part. I mean, Jesus had already undergone humiliation. He already was bleeding from the, anyway, he scourges him and delivers him to be crucified. If Jesus had been bleeding, and I assume he had been because he'd been hit several times before he got to Pilate, Now, when he's in front of the soldiers, the blood starts because they strip him, they put a crown of thorns on his head, they hit him. He's been scourged. And scourging, by the way, what is scourging? You've heard of a cat of nine tails. You have this whip with, 9 or maybe more strands on it, and at the end of each strand is a piece of bone. You whip it like this, and it hits the back of the criminal, and it immediately tears the flesh, and you do it again and again and again. It removes the flesh, and all that's exposed is the muscle and the veins and the nerves. It's horrible. Time and again in history, men have died from scourging because of loss of blood and nothing else. This is nasty. This was way beneath Pilate. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, verse 29, they put on his head a reed in his right hand, bowed the knee before him, mocked him. This is a part of the whole process, by the way. The ultimate pain of crucifixion was public humiliation. But Jesus is being humiliated before he's being humiliated. He's being privately humiliated by the soldiers, and then he's going to be publicly humiliated in a few minutes at Calvary. Hail, King of the Jews! Spitting on him, striking him on the head, mocking him. Took this robe off him, put his own clothes back on him, and his own clothes would quickly be drenched in blood, and led him away to be crucified. Now, as I said, I think it was the last program or two programs, anywhere from 600 to 1,000 soldiers were stationed in Palestine. Maybe not all of them would have been there in Jerusalem at the same time, but there's several hundreds there. They were at the Praetorium, the Antonia Fortress, which was the headquarters of the procurator when he was in Jerusalem. And so the soldiers would have their barracks there. This was their quarters there. They would have a place to, do their parade drills there. And this was such a break from the regular routine of their lives. This pretender to the Jewish throne, hey, let's have some fun with him. And so everything from the crown of thorns, briars pushed on his head, hitting him, on the briars, driving them into his skull. And from your own experience that, no injury bleeds like a scalp injury. Then, the blood from the scourging on the back, hail, King of the Jews, physical abuse, mockery. And in all of this, as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. This mute criminal, King of the Jews, standing before them in his humiliation, could have called 10,000 angels if he wanted to. He was worth more than 1 billion of these soldiers. And he submits. Then it's time to walk to the cross. As they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they had come to the place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of the skull, they gave him sour wine mingled with gall to drink. But when he tasted it, he would not drink. I have to explain crucifixion to you. We all have this picture, because we've seen so many pictures, of this hill with 3 crosses on the horizon of the hill, standing there in stark relief against a darkened sky. And there's Jesus with 2 thieves, one on either side, hanging between heaven and earth. Well, it's a picture, but it's an incorrect one. Crucifixions occurred at ground level because anyone who was condemned as an insurrectionist, other than a Roman citizen, would be crucified. Right on the main road there, in Jerusalem's case, between the Damascus Gate and Damascus, which was about 40, 50 miles away, 60 miles away. So there was constant traffic, commercial traffic, casual travel. Walked right past a limestone quarry where many of the limestone rocks were quarried to help build, the Antonia Fortress and other parts of the wall around Jerusalem. They used to bring in limestone from other parts of Judea and Samaria as well. And as is the case with any limestone quarry, there was all kinds of, chiseled pieces that were lying there on the ground, some as big as your hand, some as big as a couple fingers. It was a perfect place for stoning. So, when the Jewish people by the Romans were allowed to stone those who transgressed their laws, that's where they would kill them, with stoning. That's where the Romans would crucify them, at eye level. They'd either have, the trunk of a tree jammed into the ground, or sometimes they would actually use, a tree that may have been growing in the area, or they would take, some piece of lumber and jam it into the ground. And then the person who's being crucified had to take the, I think it's patibellum, the crosspiece, and carry it over his shoulders to the place of crucifixion. And they would then nail him to that thing. They would suspend him. They would put ropes under his arms and around his knees. In some cases, they would nail his feet to the bottom of the cross to keep him there suspended. But people could walk by and look him in the eye and spit him in the face and accuse him of all kinds of things and make fun of him and humiliate him. And he lay there naked. It was horrible. This is what's about to happen to Jesus.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
Friends, this year marks my 50th year in the ministry. I know I'm not old enough to be able to say that, so I started when I was 5. Not true. I feel like in many ways I'm just hitting my stride right now, but over the course of my life in the ministry, I've been involved in a number of sort of cutting-edge pioneering things. King of Kings Church in Jerusalem is case in point, but more recently, in the last 20 years, my wife and I have pioneered what's called Working for Orphans and Widows. We work with orphans and widows who are at risk, the least of these. Being a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows in various countries in Africa and now also in India. And you see the promo on the show. You can log on to wowmission.com. JCT, this show, comes to you through WOW. And when you support WOW, you support JCT and vice versa. When you ask for Cantelon's Casual Commentary, remember your best ministry gift, friends. With it, we'll make a big difference.